Hi.
Hey, how are you, Alyssa?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great. It's good morning. I just this morning finished dialing in all of the Perc coffees on.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. So I feel very prepared. To, I know how they taste, so to speak. So I'm all ready. Yeah, yeah. How are you doing? How's your morning been so far?
Good so far. I've been in Atlanta all week, so this is my first day back in Savannah. So it's nice to just be at the roastery this morning.
No, good to hear. Um,
Yeah.
did you say you've been in Savannah all week or been in Atlanta all week?
Been in Atlanta all week.
Okay, wonderful. Did you enjoy your time there?
Yeah, it was nice. I was visiting family and getting some work done, so it was
Oh,
kind of like for fun and for work.
yeah.
Yeah, we have a customer in Athens outside of Atlanta who's opening a second location, so we were doing some training with them, and
Nice.
that's always just fun, like getting to know the baristas, because a lot of times with wholesale, I'm getting to know owners, but don't get to know
Yeah.
the people who actually work there. So it's always nice, like spending time with them, and
Yeah.
it's called Cafe Racer. And they're super awesome. So
Love to hear. I'll have to look them up. Man, that's awesome. I really enjoy Atlanta. I try to go there every other year or so, maybe sometimes every year, and it's just always a great time. So, yeah. Oh, that's so fun.
and it's so crazy because like I worked in Atlanta coffee for 6 years, and when I first started in 2016, there was like hardly any roasters, and most of the shops were using counterculture.
Mhm.
And it feels like now it's just exploded, and there's so many coffee companies and so many roasters, and we've Atlanta's always had a really solid like coffee community, but it's so cool like so many people that were just baristas at other shops are now like starting their own companies and roasting. So it's really cool. Every time I go to Atlanta, I'm like, I have to go to this person's place and this
Yeah.
person's place. It's like so fun watching people like grow up in coffee,
Mm,
like we
yeah.
all started just making coffee, and now look at us and what we're doing. So I like it's just gotten crazy though. There's so many shops now. I feel like when I first started, there were like 6 or 7 shops, like period, and now it's like so many.
hmm
Wild.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, and it's always fun. It's fun going to different cities and seeing all the cafes and all the above.
Mhm.
Yeah,
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 it's my favorite thing. I always, whenever I travel, I have to go to like 5 different cafes just to like see the variety, what's happening everywhere. It's really cool.
yeah. I love to hear it. Well, to begin, do you mind kind of starting with probably just yourself and kind of your coffee journey? Yeah.
Yeah. So I started working in coffee in 2012. So this year marks my 13th year in coffee, which for Perk, 13 is like a really important number. So I'm always like, it feels very Perk significant. And
Mm.
I got started just because I was going to school for sociology and really focusing on environmental sociology. So like agriculture and just like the systems that we build around it. And so that's kind of how I got interested in this coffee company that was in the small town in Southwest Georgia called Cafe Campesino. They're like organic, fair trade, and would like bring farmers in. So I was like, this is the only job I could have that like kind of relates to anything that I'm studying. And I always say I applied there so many times before I got a job, and I wanted to work there so bad. And it was because I had worked at Captain D's that I finally got a job in coffee, because they were like, now you have food service experience. And so always had that interest in like the system, like the seed to cup system of it all, but didn't know that much about making coffee, and really got into that and fell in love with just like the hospitality acts, like part of being in the community, especially there since it was such a small town. It was like we were always having like random events, and then getting into the science of making coffee. And from there, I moved back home to Atlanta, and that's when I started working at a place in Atlanta called Tap Room, and we were a counterculture account. And if anyone's familiar with that, there's always a training center, and that training center kind of also becomes its own little community where it's like not just people from counterculture cafes, but like everyone comes and will like play around with coffees there. And that's where I learned a lot of like the science of like TDS and extraction and how to make like I knew how to make good coffee, but I didn't know the science behind what I was doing. I just knew what like tasted good. And so
Yeah.
like understanding what I was doing. And then from there I got really involved in Brewers Cup and I
Mhm.
competed. And then um, eventually after managing there, and then we become a multi-roaster. So I always say like multi-roasting accounts like Comet, I'm very familiar with like getting all the samples and tasting everyone's coffee, and then creating a lineup around that, and then having to like dial in coffees that you've never used that coffee, and everyone roasts a little different, so you like have to adjust your recipes. um, did that for a long time, and then moved into wholesale account managing in Ohio at first, and then finally came to Perc around 3 years ago. And I just really, it's a good fit for me because I've always been someone who, yes, coffee is a luxury and it can be super fancy, but I also really like it when it's approachable for everyone.
Mm.
And that's kind of the perk mythos is like we have a coffee at whatever stage or journey you are in coffee. So we have like super approachable, just like chocolate nutty, we have a dark roast, and then we have like the super fancy Panama geishas and things like that. So I just love like getting to work with a lot of different people, um, and figuring out what they like. Because to me, it's always the best coffee is what you like to drink every morning. Like we can say this is a 98 point coffee, but you know, a 98 point coffee isn't going to be everyone's favorite coffee. So I'm like, sometimes we forget that. I'm like, a lot of people in the world, you'll give them the best coffee and they'll just be like, I like my gas station coffee every morning. And fair enough, you
Yeah.
know? So, I kind of like just figuring out people's what people are into and finding the coffee that really like suits what they like. So
Yeah.
really good fit. So
Yeah. Well, there's a couple wonderful things you said in there. First thing, that kind of came to my mind is you were saying you're, at the training center at Counterculture, and you kind of got into the competition world. Um,
Mhm.
how did that kind of come up? Like, yeah, how did it come about?
I really have to shout out if anyone is from Atlanta, they probably know Sarah Furnock. She was
Mm.
organizing a lot of events around Atlanta, and she was the Brewers Cup stage manager before me. And she was just super like recruiting people to get involved. And she was like, there was an event in Montgomery, Alabama. And that was the first one that I ever volunteered at and kind of got to see how it all works. And I feel like it feels so much less scary when you're like volunteering and you're like doing dishes and stuff and you get to see like the backstage of it all and the front stage. So I really have to say that she was probably the reason why I even thought about starting to do it
Mm.
as like a real thing and not just like, oh, I watch videos sometimes and that would be really cool. But yeah, she just made it seem like not an impossible feat. And then also, and then I signed up to judge. And then the prelims were in Atlanta one year. So prelims were like $40. So it was like low stakes for the first one to do. I was like, it's in Atlanta, you don't have to travel. It's only $40. I'm just gonna see what happens. And I got fourth place. And then I got into Glitter Cat. And Glitter Cat also really gave me like the confidence to do it. Glitter Cat was like a training for just like minority groups in coffee that are underrepresented on the competition stage. And so they like flew us out to Kansas City and we trained for Brewers Cup and they gave us like so much advice and we got to meet like judges. We got to meet the person who won Worlds that year, which I had kind of already knew her because I volunteered for Worlds and I messed up her timekeeping. And so I was hoping she wasn't going to recognize me. I was just like, please don't. That's always my story of no matter what goes wrong, you're still going to be welcome back into space because I gave the wrong time cues, but it was all good. And she just was so nice. So that's why I'm like, it all seems scary, and sometimes it can be really scary, but it's also everyone in the competition world really wants to support people, and especially like I think so many of us started at like really small companies, and so we understand like the struggle of like getting resources to compete and like feeling like you don't belong because you're like my first coffee job was in Southwest Georgia. Like I didn't start working in coffee in like New York or LA or even Atlanta. And so it's like sometimes you feel like, oh, I just work at this tiny little place and like, do I even know how to make good coffee? And it's like, yeah, you do. You're making good coffee. You're just like in a small space and that's okay. So we all try to like we really want people to feel like no matter where you come from or what you're doing, like you can be on stage and you can say something important. And you make really good coffee. I always say like all people who compete on stage, I'm like, you're making good coffee. That's the tricky thing is like you're making good coffee and this person makes great coffee and we're
Yeah,
just splitting hair at especially at nationals. I'm like, you're just splitting hairs over tiny things. If you look at people's scores, it's like so close sometimes. It's like
yeah.
heartbreaking. You're like, you were just half,
Yeah.
like you're just 1 point away. And then now I stage manage and I'm on the Brewers committee and kind of on the organization side of it all. And then, yeah, it's pretty fun. I always say like my coffee community is so big from doing it. And that makes me feel really lucky because like even now I live in Savannah. So it's like here in Savannah, there's not a ton of shops, but I still feel like so connected to things just from all the people I get to meet and see every year through that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Obviously you mentioned in our original call too, just like how much you're a proponent, obviously being on the committee, doing all this stuff.
Mhm.
And I think you touched on a couple different things, but yeah, what from doing Brewers Cup,
Yeah.
uh, what do you think was the biggest like takeaway for you that you were just like it was worth it 100%?
Yeah. The people I got to meet, just not even competitors, but getting to know judges. Um, and then I felt like, I mean, when I got to nationals, I didn't think I was going to get there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do know how to make coffee. Cool. Because I always did it. I'm not a super competitive person. I kind of wanted to just see how far I could get, like I think I know what I'm doing. I think I do, but like getting that feedback on and like positive feedback because a lot of people don't realize like the judges are super supportive and they're like your biggest cheerleaders too. Like they just have to score you, so like they're splitting hairs. But I just remember like after I was done, um, Kendra and Sarah Rice were like my um, judges, and they just were like, they knew it was my first year doing it, and they were just so positive talking to them. And so it made me feel like really good. Um, and then also, the biggest takeaway, too, I think my biggest takeaway from judging before I even competed was that it doesn't matter what you're brewing on, because I think sometimes people think they have to use like the coolest, like newest brewer. It's more about being able to explain why and connect that to what you're tasting. I think sometimes people get distracted by like the show of all of it, of like, oh my gosh, these beautiful sensory cups, which don't get me wrong, we all know like the shape of the cup will affect flavor. But I'm like, you can go pretty far even on a smaller budget. Like I used AeroPresses that at the time were like $25 each. And then I used just like metal milk pitchers that I found on Amazon for $10. And like I had like I always want to print off like how much did I spend on everything because I tried to spend like as little as I could because Taproom was supporting me in like paying for my registration and stuff like that, but all my wares and things, because we were just a single cafe. Like here at Perc, like we're a roastery, so there's like lots of stuff that people have access to and can use. And like you're being at a roastery, you do get like a little bit more connected to different companies and things like that for sponsorship. And I was lucky in that, like doing Glitter Cat, they gave us an electric kettle. And so I had two kettles. I didn't have to
Yeah.
buy two, like little things like that. But
Yeah.
I think sometimes people feel pressured to be like using the newest, fanciest, most expensive things that they possibly can get. And don't get me wrong, there are certain advantages to certain things, but it really comes down to like, can you say why and explain what you did? And that's how you do well. And like seeing that from the judge's perspective, like really empowered me to like try to do it. Because yeah, it's funny what people take away from watching the competition videos, and I totally get it because they're like edited, and like people are focusing, they don't get to taste the coffees, so they don't, that's part of it. And especially in brewers, it's like mostly sensory, so it's like that's where a lot of the your score is a cupping score, basically is cupping score sheet. But it is like my biggest thing is like if you don't have access to um like the coolest newest thing, there are people out there who will sponsor you and help you if you just reach out. But also it's like that's not what it's about. It's just purely like the love of the science of brewing and
Yeah.
explaining why. People get very into telling the story and forget to relate to like the brewing, because yeah, it's not the most exciting part for some people, but it's like if you're coffee nerdy, and that's what we want to hear. So
Yeah.
uh,
Wonderful answers. Yeah, people, and it doesn't need to be the fanciest stuff. That,
I mean,
yeah.
if you can get your hands on a really fancy coffee, obviously that's not going to hurt you. But you can do really well with something like even like the Ethiopia Chelcheli, something like that, where it's like
Gosh.
it's clear tasting notes, it's delicious, it's balanced,
Yeah.
it's sweet. Like that coffee is not a super expensive coffee, and you could
Yeah.
do well with a coffee like that. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. The first time we started the subscription,
Mhm.
the first call I had, or we used, I think Mame was our first month, and so
Mhm.
I got to chat with Emmy.
Yeah.
And Emmy was like genuinely kind of similar things to what you're saying, of just like
Mhm.
how much she learned from competing, and the fact that like she just got to meet so much wonderful people along the way. And
Mhm.
kind of I was always, or not always, but I've kind of been, why compete, if you don't need to. And so I'm like slowly going the opposite direction of just like, wow,
Mhm.
like I can learn more.
Yeah.
Very much so. Also,
Yeah, and then
oh
and
yeah.
in brewers, a lot of people don't know half of your score is what we call compulsory, where you get a mentary coffee and you have 45 minutes to dial it in. And it can be anything as long as it's like medium roast. There's like a certain, it has to be um, wash, medium roast, and has to fit no major defects, and that's it. So it's just what people want to give us. Um, and I think even getting ready for compulsory made me so much of a better brewer, because you just have to like learn how to make decisions quickly, because it's like you
Mhm.
only have 45 minutes with a coffee you've never used before, and then you have 7 minutes to brew those 3 cups. So it's just about making good decisions. And it's like everyone has the same coffee. Like sometimes people complain about what the coffee is, because they'll be like, it's not, it's usually not like a Panama geisha or something like that. A lot of times it's just like, this is a wash under and coffee. This
Yeah.
is what the company could give us. And they'll complain about the coffee, but I'm always like, everyone had the same coffee. So like if you look at the scoring, it's like it's still who brewed it the best.
Yeah.
But people like to complain, but I'm like, it's supposed to be hard too. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, if you can make any coffee taste really great, that's like a special skill, more of a skill than like making a Panama geisha taste great, because it's already gonna taste great.
It's already amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Also, there might be a moment where I have to go get my dog because he is barking so.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Usually he's really good, but literally also the last interview, for some reason he was just like, "I know you're home.
Yeah.
I want to hang out." I'll give it like another like minute, but if he keeps going, I'll like bring him in here and
Okay.
hopefully he'll,
It's
he'll be more chill. Just so you know. Funny enough, a couple of us at Comet, we like to think of him as our like our mascot dog because his name is Macchiato, and
oh.
he came with the name. Like we didn't name him that, and so we were just like, of course, something like that would happen.
Yeah.
We thought that
I
was really,
love that.
yeah,
And then you can never change the name though. I always feel like I have to name the dog myself, but if it comes with a great name, then gotta keep it.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Meant to be with
yeah,
macchiato.
yeah. Well, one other thing you mentioned, kind of just briefly chatting about yourself, was I thought, or kind of it's twofold. I love that you kind of started, you said, in a somewhat like smaller town or like a cafe that wasn't big, so it wasn't in LA, it wasn't in New York.
Yeah.
And then, fast forwarding, you even eventually moved to like, was it Cleveland, Ohio? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like all of a sudden, starting in the small, you go back to Atlanta, go to Cleveland. Now you're in Atlanta, Savannah area. Um, what has that like, you mentioned a wee bit of like how it's been great having that community now, but how has your perspective changed specifically from kind of coming from like a smaller cafe to now being at Perc and all the good
Yeah.
of it? Yeah.
I think like I think sometimes when you're working for a small company or like in a small town, you always question like are we making great coffee? Like are we serving people because you feel so isolated from everyone else. And
Mm,
now the more that I travel, I'm just like some of the best coffees I've gotten have been like such surprises just in like small towns and like
mm,
you walk in and you can tell like maybe they didn't have like, $1 million budget for their build out and they just have, a
yep.
llama circle linea and they don't have
Mhm.
like top of the
Yep.
line, but they're still like really making great coffee.
Yeah.
And that's one thing about working in wholesale that I really love because like you help people find the right equipment for them, and it's like I always understand there's like a budget to all of it.
Yeah.
And really, if you have like the knowledge, you can make stuff taste really great. And then on the flip side of it, there is like when you are in a big town, you do have access to resources so much more than people in smaller places just because it's like, when I was in Atlanta, it'd be like, well, Marzocco is coming through with an event. Slowpour is coming through an event. Like all these companies are coming through, and you get to see more of the pathways for all the different careers. Like you get so much more exposure to that kind of stuff than you do when you're in a smaller town. But now it is like with how much more people are active on social media than they were like in 2012. I'm like you can still see so much of it and get involved. That's why I think it's always like one of those things, even with like SEA Expo and things like that. Like you can meet so many people and you can make so many connections at those events, but if you're active enough, you can also do that online. So it's always like the virtual versus real life of it all. But I think overall it's like people in really small towns are, and probably people in St. Louis feel this way, because it's like not a huge town and
Hmm.
y'all probably don't get people traveling through as often as like like if you look at stuff in LA, there's always something going on in the coffee community in LA.
Yep.
Um, and that's really nice. But it's like people in these smaller towns are also doing really great things. Like sometimes I wish there was more of I want there to be a coffee podcast out there that's just like, here's someone in Oklahoma doing a great job, or here's someone, because I just feel like uh,
Huh.
we're geared so much to those big cities because of people like writers for the magazines and things. That's where they are, and so that's who they're going to get exposed to. But intentionally seeking out those people who aren't in the big towns and finding them, and there are some like really great like people doing like making great coffee in really in spaces that you wouldn't think like, like I think we're doing great things in Savannah, and then it grew to Atlanta. But then it's like, methodical in Greenville. Like you wouldn't think of Greenville as a coffee company, or like, Onyx. People forget it's Bentonville, Arkansas. Like
Right. Yeah.
so, um, I hope people like don't feel that way as much. But I know it's so hard when you're in a small town, and like most of the time, you are, making the sweet stuff. I always tell people like my first coffee job, we weren't even fighting against what people knew from Starbucks because there wasn't even a Starbucks within like an hour and a half. It was like
Yeah.
people knew coffee from gas stations. So it's like you're just introducing, like it is legitimately like someone's first time in a coffee shop where like a latte is even on the menu. Of course,
Wow.
yeah, so it's like it's such a different world for your job and like what you talk about with folks. So, but I also think that's what made it so special, and it's so funny because like so many of the people that I worked with, we still all work in coffee. We're just all scattered across the U.S., and I think that it's because we were so small, and the owners of that roastery, when it came to the cafe, they really let us like make a lot of the decisions. And that's not always what happens. Those owners, they knew a lot about sourcing coffee and things like that, but they had never run a coffee shop before, and so it was new to them. So we were all kind of like experimenting together. I always tell folks, like, because we were 3 hours away from any espresso tech, the rule was always like you had to try to fix stuff yourself before you called anyone. And so
Whoa.
that's the number one reason why I know how to fix anything, is just because like when I was managing there, you just had to try. So I would just get on there on Google and see if I could figure it out. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's like it's something very serious that I don't know how to fix. But I
Wow.
learned a lot about plumbing, and I learned a lot of grinders. And I always tell folks, I'm like, I installed a machine 1 year after working in coffee because they thought I could do it, and they let me do it, and it worked out. So
That's incredible.
yeah,
Oh
but
my
I know, I think it's so crazy. Like now I look back on that, I'm like, I would never let someone do that, but they let me do it because they trusted me. And like having that much trust when you're so new to something um is like so wild. um
Yeah.
yeah, but I always say, I'm like, it's because of how much like they like saw that I was interested in coffee and let me like explore and change the way we were doing things. Because like at first we were doing a lot of things that you're like, oh, that's not right. But like I remember we used to like grind all the coffee for the morning service, and then I was like, what if we ground coffee right before we brewed it, and like things like that. But it was never like they were so willing to try out different things, which was really nice, um, because they had never done it before. So always a special place. And then so many of us work in coffee now who are like in that crew of like building that cafe and helping it work, make it work. So
Wow. Man,
yeah.
that is remarkable. You install a machine. Dude, the idea of not having an espresso tech, that like
Yeah. Yeah, well, because we were 3 hours away, and even back then it was like $50 an hour to get someone out there,
yeah.
and like we were super small. Like, you know, we were doing like 500. This was I have to say 2012 money, but I'm like, it was like $500 days, like
Yeah.
most days. So we were
Yeah.
super small. Like $150 to get someone out there is like so crazy when that's like your margin on everything. But like I said, I'm like, I learned a lot. And we did have someone around who was just like, he was like a handy guy, and he would figure out how to fix stuff. And he was super awesome too, because he would always take the time to show me how he fixed something and like why, which you're not going to get from most of your espresso techs. No fault of their own, they're just busy and they don't have time to like, they're just trying to take care of this so they can go to the next cafe with something broken. So they don't have time to like tell you why they're doing something or like what gave them the clue, but he he wasn't an espresso tech, but he was very good at figuring out how to fix stuff, and he also like helped take the time of like showing me just like how to do things. And so like that also it was very empowering because it was never like I'm like no one there was like I'm the expert, we're gonna do it this way. It was always like
Mm.
let's try to figure this out together, which like when you're new to an industry is very nice because it just doesn't make you feel like oh I'm bottom of the rung. It feels like okay, I can have input, I can have impact. Like everyone there, even if you were just a barista, could have a strong, like a big impact because there were only five of us. So like when there's only five people, like everyone's opinion gets heard and listened to. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Crazy, crazy story. Your entire just how you got to Perk and what you've done before getting to Perk is genuinely remarkable. Uh,
yeah, and yeah, it's so nice now because we are a bigger company, so we have like a lot more resources. But I think sometimes it's nice having both experiences of like being in a smaller place and being at a bigger place. And I say bigger, we're still not that big. There's only me on the wholesale team, so I'm like, but it makes you an independent worker, which I think most people appreciate because I'm always like, I'll try to figure it out first before I ask, but I will ask if I can't figure it out. But
oh
I
yes.
always try.
Also the fact that you've been in coffee for 13 years. That's, I mean, obviously a lot of people have also been in coffee for 13 years, but like people like me and some of the people I work with, we're like 7 years max. Some
Yeah.
people between 2 and 4, and so it's crazy. You're one of those. You've been around crushing it.
Yeah, well, and 9 of those years were just being a barista and a manager. So I always feel like even on the wholesale front, like I'm like I still feel like I'm so new to the site sometimes. Um and it's always wild to me because I like and I do miss being behind bars sometimes because it's like you make connections as wholesale, but you don't get as like personal with people like you do when you're their like everyday barista. So sometimes I miss that. And
Yeah.
like I think it's so important for people to have that barista experience anywhere they end up working in coffee because
Mhm.
like I feel like people get pigeonholed on production roasting versus like coffee service, and there's like different pathways, but like you are a better roaster if you have served coffee because you know what it's like to dial an espresso and you know what service looks like. If the coffee is like really great but only like this much time, and then doing my side of stuff, I couldn't imagine doing wholesale and not having a coffee service
Mhm.
background because
Yeah.
I get so many really specific questions,
Yeah.
and so I know people who do it, and I you can always learn coffee, but I think sometimes people don't treat being a barista as a career. But I'm like that. Like if you don't want to work in coffee for the rest of your life, totally valid. Understand. You can just be a barista, but I think sometimes people don't see all the things you can do because you have that background. Like there's so many cool jobs out there, like so many. Even like working for packaging companies and things like you don't even have to be on the coffee roasted side. There's so many products associated, and you have so much knowledge that you don't really know that you have.
Yeah.
um, yeah, but 7 years is still a long time. I'm like anyone who makes it past like two, I'm like you're war veteran. Like especially like 2 years of being a barista and stuff. It's a lot, and
Yeah.
it's a lot of knowledge and so much hard work. So
Yeah. Well, being the wholesale manager for 3 years, I mean, like I don't think I've said this yet to like people who are getting the subscription because we haven't really given out. It'll be tomorrow, obviously, and we're shipping everything out already. And but like I said to I've been I think the manager here for or one of the managers for about I think a little over 2 years if I remember correctly. I might be wrong, but it's around there. And obviously, as a multi-roaster, we get a lot of roasters just sending us samples without
Mhm.
reaching out.
Mhm.
And I kid you not, th this truly is the first time that, got the note from you, which was super sweet. That was such a lovely handwritten note. Yeah, just kind of what you said and everything, and just kind of just throwing coffee our way just to see if we loved it. And it was fantastic. It blew out, I think, almost if not, I'd have to look at my notes, but almost if not everything on the cupping table. And it was just like, this is the first time that someone sent us coffee, like just on a, I shouldn't, I don't know, on a whim, but like nonetheless, you just sent it, and we were just like, we've got to do it. So you're doing a great job.
Well, thanks. Well, I have to say too, part of being what I've found is you also part of my strategy sometimes is we did have people like tell us like this is where I like to get coffee and everything like that. And getting a feel from people's social media and like what it lets you know already if it's going to be a fit because I can kind of see like what kind of coffees people have and y'all do a good job of like presenting what you'll have. So I was like, okay, this seems like y'all would like what we're doing. um and really with wholesale too, it's like sometimes just sending coffee is the best way to do it because like I know you get inundated with emails and you're going through and it's really like tasting it is the thing that can like make a difference. But I will say I approach sales very research heavy, so I like always am like trying to like I always try to get a good feel for people
Mhm.
um, before cold sending samples. I'm like it feels cold, but for me it always feels really warm because I'm like I'm looking through everyone's stuff and then like seeing people's websites, how things are set up, and I can already tell if something's going to be a good fit or not. And it's like sometimes it's just like if I see someone like we have a lot of like funky fruity coffees and some people are very wash purists and they want their terroir heavy coffees, so it's like I'm not going to send out the my funky coffees to people that I can see they're getting mostly washed and it's
Mhm.
very like the delicate floral stuff. So it's very helpful when people have good social media content so I can really get a feel of like what someone's doing. And then it's like I know our approachable ones, if it seems like someone's like doing mostly espresso based stuff and they're just like cranking out, like fun drinks all the time, then I'm like, oh, I know what to send to you. But yeah, it's I still say I'm working I'm always working on it, but yeah, getting a feel for people really helps.
Yeah.
And so y'all had a very it was when I was scrolling through the y'all's feed, I could tell kind of like what y'all were digging. And so I always like pick my samples based off of that.
Well, I love to hear it.
Yeah. And at Perk too, one thing that we like to do is we like to drink other people's coffees. So we're always like buying, and that really helps me too, is like just getting familiar with like ever because the thing is there's so much great coffee out there. So many people are doing really great things, and sometimes it's just the luck of the draw of like who has what at what times, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
I know one of the subscription coffees is like the Diego Bermudez coffee.
Hmm.
And we were really lucky to get like direct contact with him and set up a direct relationship where he like literally airships us coffee. And so it makes it a lot easier to have that available. And that's like one of the pros of being like the size that we are because when you're really small you can't really do things like that, and then also when you're really big you have to get so much of it, it's hard to do things like that. So we're like in the sweet spot for getting coffee right now
Yeah.
when getting coffee is so crazy right now. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just really appreciate you being research heavy because I mean, genuinely speaking, we love roasters who have, wonderful relationships with producers, farmers, co-ops. And so we've really tried to have a good relationship with the roasters that we work with also, like, and so like the fact that like you would even take the time, to at least look us up a little bit.
Yeah.
Generally says something because, sometimes we'll have calls with, roasters or, I get to meet them in person and
Mm.
they, have like sent us samples or something of the sort, but they just have like no idea who we work with. They, just saw our
Mhm.
name or someone just told, which is fine as well. But we appreciate it when there's like just a little bit more effort put in. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I always like to get like I really love looking at like people's drink menus and seeing what fun things and like in my head I'm like, ooh, if I got to go to St. Louis tomorrow, this would be the drink I would get because it
Yeah.
like I just love coffee and I love coffee shops. So for me, it's also the fun part of my job is like, oh, like someone will tell me about somewhere or send in a suggestion and looking them up and I'm like, oh my gosh, I never knew this place. This place looks so great. And then I feel so special when it's like I see the coffee on their menu and like they're posting about it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this great place. It feels like so full circle. Even if I don't, even if like I haven't gotten a chance to go there or I might not get a chance like while our coffee is there, it feels that connection of community like just
Yeah.
feels so good. But yeah, I'm glad I try. But also
You do great.
I'm probably just on Instagram looking at coffee shops anyway in my free time. So I say it's like part of my job, but I that's probably what I'd be doing anyway. Cause like me and my sister travel together a lot and we always have like our list of everywhere we're gonna go beforehand. So I just love like looking at people's menus and looking at people's pictures of like restaurants and stuff like um that's I you can really tell when someone the ownership side and management side is like passionate about what they're doing
Hmm.
because of how they present it. And so it's
Yeah.
like, oh, this could be so good. And I think that's like the fun part of hospitality is like how you're
Yeah.
building those things. So I love seeing what people are doing.
Mm.
Even if I wasn't working in coffee, that's I know, like I would just be scrolling, like
Yeah. I feel you.
just
Very much so.
imagine getting to go there. So I'm like, I would probably be doing it.
I love it. Well, now that we've kind of chatted about you, do you mind giving just a brief backstory on Perk and kind of just how it began? Yeah.
Yeah. So Perc got started in 2010, so it's our 15-year anniversary. Phillip Brown, who's our owner, and he does all of our branding and is very hands-on in Savannah. He started the company when he moved to Savannah because of his wife's job. He had previously worked in like Athens. He was like in a band and was working in coffee at a place called Jittery Joe's in Athens, which like if anyone's ever went to UGA, that's like the coffee in Athens. And at first, it was just kind of like a side gig for him where he was just like, this just fits with my lifestyle of like having to leave every now and then. And he always says the thing that like really changed his mind about coffee was he was lucky enough to work at the shop that was the roastery. And one day he noticed like his favorite coffee from, I think it was from Cameroon, wasn't there anymore. And he was like, why are we not getting this coffee? And then, he's like, well, there's all this like political uprising happening. That's why we can't get that coffee. And so for him, it like finally connected of like all these things that are going on in the world connect to like that cup that you're drinking. And so then he got into the roasting side. And in Savannah, when he moved here, there really wasn't like any specialty coffee. And so he saw like, okay, no one's really doing this. I'm gonna just like introduce people in Savannah to this. But he started off super small. It was just him and a little roaster, and he used to like ride his bike delivering coffee. He always says he's just like went up and down the streets, like talking to every restaurant and really trying to like at that time, there's all these really nice restaurants in Savannah, and like coffee is just an afterthought. They're not thinking of it as like the full experience. So trying to like emphasize like this ingredient is just as important as your other ingredients and like sourcing great coffee and having those relationships can like really change the hospitality at a restaurant too. Um, And so he says his first employees were his parents, and they had a van to help deliver after a while. But we were super small for a long time. And then Alan, who's our other owner, he was at the military base here and got to know Philip just because he was super passionate about coffee. And so him and Philip used to do the farmers market here, and they used to just like chat coffee. And he would come by all the time, just like asking questions. And he was trying to figure out like, just wanted all the information. And so like they bonded on them both being really passionate. And then he decided to go get his MBA, and he did his project around Perc and had this
Wow.
like game plan. And then he joined the company. Like Philip was like, "It seems like you're really good at numbers and like
Yeah.
planning growth and stuff." Because Philip, I always say, is like he is like the creative brain. Like he has like the funnest, craziest ideas. Like anything that you see that's like we're about to release like our Halloween box coffee,
Yeah.
and it's always like he's always thinking about the experience of the customer. And like I said, we just want specialty coffee to be fun. And so he brings that to the game, and then Alan brings more of like the numbers, like like really being able to like predict and forecast things. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times when you're just like one person doing a business, you're kind of just like taking care of stuff as they go. And then when you can grow like the upper team a little bit, you can really start like planning and forecasting. And so after he joined the team, it was really like, okay, what do we want to do? Where do we want to be? And like, how do we get there? But they both are super passionate about coffee. So that's the kind of like commonality that they have. But I always say like, it's really great in a company having like both sides of like the person with the like crazy ideas and then the person's like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. So they created a great team. And then we started, and we had like for the longest time we were mostly doing wholesale at, like grocery stores and things like that. And then once we started adding in more retail, like now we have 6 shops. We could start sourcing different coffees too, because it's like when most of your business is one way, you kind of have to build your coffee sourcing around it. And then um, once we were able to add more like outlets, we could like diversify our coffee a little bit more. Not to say we didn't always have great coffee, but
Mhm.
I think at first there was like kind of like, will people want to buy the fancy Panama geishas? And then they just like started buying it, and then people liked it. So then it was like, okay, this is working and we can sell it. But I think really like us opening the retail shops was like the first step of like people getting to know the brand of Perk. Because like
Mhm.
when you're doing wholesale, a lot of times people know your brand only through someone else's interpretation of your brand. So
Right.
having those retail spots kind of like got a really good way of people to get to know us. And then we were
Mhm.
able to grow our brand a little bit more. And then like now I feel like we're at a spot where like our website's perfectly aligned, but it's all been like a building block of like adding people to the team that like bring those skills. And I'd say that's one thing that they both are really good at, is like recognizing people's skills and like where they make a good fit and a good impact. So
Mhm.
um, we were really able to grow after that. But I always say it's like if you looked at our lineup even 3 years ago,
Mhm.
it's completely different than it is now, because we really like honed in like what we want to do and what we want to source. And
Yeah.
we still have those accounts, but we've grown enough where we can build around those accounts and other accounts too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was a delight, being first introduced to it through tasting and then, getting on a call with you was just a
Mhm.
delight as well. Also, like,
Yes.
again, something that I was just excited about when we were first on the phone was hearing how much you loved, competition Brewers Cup because like there's not particularly many people here in St. Louis, and so it's kind of something that like I was like, oh, this is cool because like I've been thinking about it or I've always been interested in it. I don't know if I'll ever compete in Brewers specifically. But like I mentioned, having competed in cup tasters this year, I was like, okay, like it is doable to compete. I didn't do well, like I told you. but it was it was an amazing experience nonetheless, you know, like I'm
You
very
got to get
happy
the
I did
first one over with, and then you learn.
it.
But I always say, like, people who just compete
Uh,
without volunteering or judging first, I'm always like so wild, so brave. Because I'm yet again being like someone who's like,
so,
I gotta know what I'm doing before I do it. That was like my research phase of like
yeah,
competition was like volunteering because I
yeah,
was like, how does this really work? Because
yeah.
you only see like the 10 minutes of a full day, right? And so it's like,
Right.
what is actually happening? So I'm always like, people who just go for it, I'm like,
Mhm.
that's so cool. I don't know. Have you ever taken the DISC assessment of like what style worker you are? It's like,
I don't think. Oh yes, a long time ago. So, but
yeah,
I don't remember. Yeah.
yeah. One of my jobs when I was managing, they had us take like this. It was like a management class. So like the first part of the class was like you learning your own style of work, and I'm a
Mm.
C, which
Yeah.
is like cautious, where it's like I'm the type of person who needs to know like I like to make a plan before acting on it, and then like D's are like people who
Mm.
like to act on stuff and then figure out as they're going. So it's just like nothing's good or bad about the four different styles. It's just like the different
Yeah.
styles that people do things. And so yeah, I'm always like, no, I had to know what was gonna happen and like in my head have it like pictured out before like I went for it. So I'm
Yeah.
always impressed when people just do it and I'm like, that's so cool. And then now as a stage manager, I feel like I always want to make those people feel good because it can be intimidating when you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that was the odd thing for me is just like showing up to a competition, which like I met multiple people who had they judged before, they
yeah,
had judged and competed, or they had just competed and they've competed 2 or 3 years, you know, and thankfully there were at least two, if not I think 4 to 5 other people who had like never competed before, so I didn't feel alone, you know, but it was so interesting getting the just the different layout of like different people who came from different
yeah.
backgrounds.
And
Yeah.
I think it's kind of weird sometimes when you see the coffee celebrities because you're like, oh my gosh, I watched all their videos. But then you're like,
Mhm.
all of those people that you think are that are coffee celebrities, like people know them. I'm like, they still are just making coffee every day. Like everyone else in the
Yeah.
world is just viewing them as their barista, or, like it's only in the coffee world that they're like something that was for
Yeah.
me. It's like coffee celebrity stuff is so weird because it feels so awkward at first when you're like around people, but then
Hmm.
you're like, wait, you're not like a millionaire or anything like that because you still work in coffee.
Yeah.
Um, but
Uh-huh.
it can be really, really, it feels weird at first because you're
Right. Yeah.
oh my gosh, uh, like Andrea Allen, like it's like, you watch all of her videos and then she's like
Yeah.
back there, like helping coach someone and she's just doing the dishes. And then when you have to be like, you're due on stage in like 5 minutes, and it's like, yeah. But I feel like it does break the tension of like, oh, okay, we're all just people here. We're all just like humans doing the thing. Like
Yeah.
they're just really good at creating content and being entertaining, or like they're really good at public speakers. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, we're making coffee. So
Yeah.
we have more in common than not.
Hmm. Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah.
Well,
Did you compete in Brewers? Sorry.
oh,
Was
what'd you
it,
say?
did you compete in Brewers? Was that the one that or was it Barista?
I did cup tasters.
Cup Tasters. Okay. Cool. Cup
Yeah.
Tasters is hard.
Well, not of course. I mean, all competitions are hard, but I truly went in. I feel looking back with so much ignorance of just like I'd cut like for years I've been cupping like just in general, and
Yeah.
so I thought just because I cup a lot, that's like good enough to an extent, and I did very, very little practicing of triangulation specifically. And
Mm.
so I truly, I felt so ridiculous. When yeah, I only got I think 3 out of 8, if I remember correctly,
It's not that bad.
on the first round. And glad it wasn't 2 out of 8. But yeah,
Sometimes you only get one. Like
yeah,
I
but yeah.
and cup chasers it's kind of hard to practice for, and the rounds get harder and harder. So it's like at one point you're tasting the same coffee, but it's just brewed differently and stuff like that. So
Good
it's
Lord.
harder than people think it is. But it is a good one to get over as your first one of being on stage because you don't have to talk.
Yeah. Well, funny enough too, like I actually enjoy for the most part, I enjoy there's a public speaking. I
Mm,
enjoy for the most part. So, the idea of giving a presentation or chatting while doing something is generally fine for me, but you're right, it was a delight just being like I'm just tasting coffee. Um
mm,
so I remember after doing it, and coming back and a lot of people were like, "Were you nervous?" And quite honestly, I was like, not really. I was just tasting the coffee. It was, I feel like I would be nervous if I was still giving a presentation. That's just different,
yeah.
Whew. Um,
Well, I always feel like when I did it, it felt like an outer body experience because you practice it so much. You kind of just go on autopilot a little bit.
mm, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and then it's like over with and you're like, wait, did I do it? Did it happen? Um, but I like talking. I don't get nervous public speaking and things like that. Like I always tell people that part of it, it was more like the camera part of it that I was just like,
Yeah.
I the year I competed was the last year that they did live streaming. So like I'm on the internet somewhere
Mm.
competing. It's gonna be there
Oh
forever
man.
instead of like in the moment talking to people. Like in the moment of talking to people, I don't get nervous. I probably should because I feel like I will say something weird, but I just let it roll off. Like I don't care. But the fun part of it, this is the one thing about presentations though that I thought was fun, and you might relate to this since it felt completely like mine. Because when you're running a shop and things like that, you're taking what an owner wants and making that happen for them. Like a lot of what you do is just, being that intermediate between these people and these people, trying to make everyone happy. But in competition, and I was probably lucky because I hear it's different depending on what company you're representing. But my boss totally was just like, yeah, do whatever you want. Um,
Hmm.
can get whatever coffee you want. Like he was just happy that I was up there. So like it was so cool like that it was mine and like I got to pick my wares and I got to pick like how everything and I got to talk about what I wanted to talk about. Which like, you don't always get that opportunity. And to me that's like the fun part of competition too is like whatever cool thing you think is happening in coffee, go talk about it. And like you can tell when someone's like having fun because they're excited to share whatever they learned through the process of like
Hmm.
competition. Like even if it's something as small as like sugar. I always remember the competitor from Korea when she won. I forget her name right now, but when she was competing for barista and she was talking about like sugar development and the different kinds of
Hmm.
sugar and like made a whole presentation about it. But like the thing is that you could tell she was like super excited to share this information and she was just like it didn't feel so much of like I'm competing against all these people and I have to prove that I'm the best. It was just like, look at this really cool thing that I learned, and I want to show you that I learned it through barista competition. Um, and yeah, so I'm like, go do another competition, and like, it's so fun just like building your own thing that it's like, it's like the only time that you have like 10 minutes that you get to control the whole entire situation. No one else is controlling it for you. So it's like, this is what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll stay tuned. Or
I
well, we don't have to,
will.
but well, now that we've kind of gotten to hear some wonderful things about you and Perk, I would love to just like chat about each coffee that we
Yeah,
use.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, maybe starting with both of the approachables and that we used, so to speak. Which, funny you mentioned, someone being able to use the Chelchele for competition. Eh,
Mm,
You are so right.
mm,
It was so good.
mm,
Yeah, I just have to tell you real quick my experience before maybe
Yeah,
tell me a little bit more. But it was absolutely tasty on both pour over and espresso. This, other than the Diego Bermudez, was my favorite actually.
yeah. Okay, cool.
Obviously Funky Wush Wush was up there, but this was
Mm,
just an unbelievably delightful coffee.
mm,
On pour over, to me, I was kind of tasting like blueberry pie, with like cherries and red apples,
mm,
raspberry hard candy,
mm,
just round and lovely malic acidity. It was just enjoyable
mm.
together. And as a shot, I was just blown away.
Oh,
To
lovely.
me, it was tasting like a sour lemon bubble gum.
Ooh, I could see that.
Yeah, and
Mm,
throw in there just a bunch of other stuff.
yeah.
Again, like blueberries, red pear sweetness, that Cool
Mm,
Whip,
mm,
green apple, dried apricots, which I love so
mm,
much. Just really fun as an espresso. Blew
mm,
me away. So I was genuinely very surprised that like this is one of those coffees that I'm like, man, is this like a really good bang for your buck, you know?
mm.
But yeah, kind of if you're able to ch chat a little bit about this coffee or maybe how you got.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I it's a anaerobic fermentation from the Chalcelli station. Um, and the thing that we really liked about it too, because we have a lot of requests for like those classic blueberry Ethiopians. So that's kind of what we were looking for. The way like it works on our end for anyone out there who's watching this, the way like roasters usually do it is like we get all this, we'll like call folks and be like, hey, we're looking for this kind of, sometimes it's like we're specifically looking for something like an Ethiopian with blueberry notes. And so we'll just like talk to importers or farmers that we worked with before and ask for samples and kind of just like taste them all on the table. Sometimes it happens where someone, it's just like cold out reaching for you for coffee. Like a lot of times importers will just send us a table and something will like really blow our minds. On this one, we were like very specifically looking for a blueberry, like that blueberry
Mm,
natural Ethiopian coffee. And so we had
mhm.
tasted a lot of Ethiopian coffees. And, you know, especially like it gets down to like the hairs of like, well, we like this one, but is this one? And what we really liked about that one was those blueberry notes and that it was so good on both espresso
Mhm.
and drip coffee. It's so funny that you said the lemon candy, raspberry lemon candy. Yeah, I kept on saying like strawberry lemonade, like in my notes
Yeah.
for the espresso.
Yep.
And then like cobbler, like I kept on getting like so many cobbler notes.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was just one of those moments where it was like, okay, this is what we want, something blueberry, and this one is delivering,
Mhm.
and it's delivering all the different ways people are going to drink it. And it's so that coffee too, we were specifically sourcing for. So sometimes we're also looking for coffees that we're going to serve in our cafe. And in our cafe, we always have our milds, which are like right now it's Brazil Legender and has been for a while, where it's like, you know, chocolate nutty. It's going to taste chocolate nutty all the different ways. And then we source a wild that it has to be something fruity and it has to be something good, but it has to be something we know we're going to be able to put on an espresso.
Yeah.
That coffee just like fit all the things we were looking for. And it's a really fun coffee to play around with. Like you
Mhm.
can bring out either cobbler or those like candy notes, just like adjusting the ratio or adjusting the grind or like changing up the brewers like V60 versus like an immersion aeropress. You're gonna get more of that like creamy thing on the aeropress and more of the bright fruit notes. So it's really fun to try it all the different ways. So um, that's what we were looking for, and it was like, okay, perfectly fits the bill. Let's do it.
Yeah.
But we get a lot of requests for like a blueberry Ethiopian coffee. Like we
Mhm.
almost always have something like that in the lineup, just because so many of our customers, that's the flavor profile they like. So
Yeah.
it just perfectly fit it.
Yeah, and well, funny and well, I don't know. This isn't particularly funny, but
Mhm.
in terms of berries,
Mhm.
blueberry is actually one of my more like least favorite berries.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is fine, but
Mhm.
like the fact that like you mentioned like the cobbler, esque like to
Mhm.
me like also again like blueberry pie-esque, I was like, this is really fun. This is
Yeah.
just yeah, so good.
I think it also has like those pomegranate. It has the blue and the red berry
Yeah.
notes because I was also getting like you said like pomegranate, raspberry from it.
Yeah.
It just takes you on a berry journey. It was one of those ones where you're like, should we just put like mixed berry, mixed berry? Because like different
Yeah.
temperatures, you're getting different ones. That
Hmm.
it's yeah, and there's some coffee. It's also one of those coffees that it's really fun to taste it through the temperature changes because it's gonna change what it's giving to you. Versus like the other coffee that the Diego Bermudez, which is very solid. It's like it's gonna give you very similar notes all the different ways, which is
Mm.
also a nice thing about a coffee. Like some, I like the Chelchelle for being so dynamic.
Yeah.
And then I like
Oh yeah.
the Diego Bermudez for being like so reliable. Like I know what anyone is going to get out of this coffee.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, and literally even and I'll obviously like I think I mentioned this to you. I send out a little like kind of like PDF image of
Yeah.
like all my dial in. So I'll send it to you as
Mhm.
well so you can see like all my notes and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the Chelchelle like for my like espresso tasting notes like
Mhm.
I write on my notes and then I like the last thing I said was like complex. I was like there's more
Yeah.
to this,
Mhm.
like but like here's some stuff to start with.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
I'm dying.
Yeah.
Well, moving on to the Johann Vergara,
Mhm.
what a delight of a coffee.
Yeah.
Wow. I
Mhm.
especially for the espresso, um I wrote agave is not something I taste a lot in coffee.
Mhm. Mhm.
And funny enough, just a friend of mine, he is kind of studying to become a mezcal sommelier.
Oh,
So
cool.
so in the last like 2-ish years, I've had a decent amount of mezcal.
Mhm.
Very much so. A lot of really good mezcal from him because he's also like a bar manager, and so he
Mhm.
brings in like really good mezcal, and he's also like a rep for like a actual like mezcal company, and this had it. This had
Mhm.
agave. It was
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, I was genuinely just like. Like,
Mhm.
this is very interesting. I preferred it as a brew a smidge more than espresso. But wow, what a fun one. I even wrote one of the tasting notes I personally wrote was a Gallia melon, which is like a
Oh, okay.
a mixture of honeydew and cantaloupe, and it was
Mhm.
just a delight.
I
Yeah.
can definitely see that. And that's why on that coffee we put fruit cup because we kept on being like, well, it kind of tastes like pear, it kind of tastes
Hmm.
like melon, kind of tastes like orange, and really like the fruit cocktail, kind of like fruit cup syrup of all those fruits together was like what we decided was like the best encompassing of it. But
Yeah.
it is really, like you were saying, it was especially on brewed coffee, can be really dynamic. And the thing about that one that we really liked on the cupping table, we source like a lot of Colombian coffees, and we source a lot of coffees that are like face melters, just like boom. And that coffee is like a little bit more like complex, but in a soft talking way instead of just like screaming it.
Yeah.
Um, and we really liked it to bring something because that one we actually have in our cafes too right now, like behind bar. And so we had brought in so many coffees that were very in your face of like red fruit notes. And so we were like, let's bring something different to the table. And that one to me, like it almost has to like guava kind of notes where it's like tropical things in general, but not in a candy way. So it's not
Yeah.
like in your face as much, but it's a really nice cup of coffee.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's also a fun one to drink through the temperature changes. So
Yes.
yeah, but
Yeah.
you still get like that, like the agave, like sweetness and like the syrupiness of it. Like it's a
Mhm.
pretty syrupy coffee. So
Oh yeah.
it's it's really fun. And um, it's also like when I think on the bag it says like advanced wash because it goes through a lot of different fermentation steps. It was kind of like right now in Colombia, they're doing such like crazy experimental things. It's getting like harder and harder as a roaster to like fully explain what is happening in
Yeah.
a coffee because it's like, oxidized 48 hours in a tank and then it's thermal shocked and then it's anaerobic fermentation for 38 days. So you're like, but then ultimately it's washed, everything's removed before it's dried. So you're like,
Hmm.
okay. So lately we've just been like defaulting to advanced wash, but I'm like, it's if we wrote it all out, it's like thermal shock, anaerobic wash coffee. And for it to do all those crazy things and then still be like, I think a pretty approachable fruity coffee is really awesome. What I've been really liking about anything that goes through like that thermal shock phase is like thermal shock process um, is just like turning the dial up a little bit on
Hmm.
a speaker. Like it's not like to me, you can really transform the flavors of a coffee through like anaerobic co-fermentation, all of those things. But thermal shock, I feel like you're just dialing it up. But it's all still there. If anyone's watching this and doesn't know what thermal shock is, it's just the change of water temperatures. I compare it to kind of like blanching vegetables of it's warmed up and then it's chilled, and the thought process is that like that temperature change will in the cherry help create more flavor in the bean. And that's what I feel like happens. But it's like everything that's like this is a Katora coffee. And so like Katoras usually taste like pretty orange, tropical kind of notes to it. And all those things are there. It's just a little bit up a little bit compared to just like if you had a regular wash Katora.
Yeah.
So it's a fun one.
Wonderfully said. Yeah, and we well actually you mind sharing a little bit about Johann Vergara? Just because he's such a great producer too.
Yeah, yeah. And so we found him, we got samples from him, and then let me double check the farmer that he works with because I don't want to misspeak on. There's so many great Colombian farmers doing cool fermentation stuff, and I'm just like, I don't want to say that he worked with the wrong farmer. Um, yes. Okay. Nestor Lasso.
Yeah.
So I just had to double check because I'm like, so originally, if n- no one's had Nestor Lasso's coffees, they're crazy good. We had the Obligón,
Mhm.
which was also an advanced anaerobic coffee. Um, and so Nestor Lasso had done tons of experimental fermentation things. And then Juan Vieira had also like worked with him and then started his own farm and processing station, Piñas Blancas. And so he's kind of on his own now, but had that like since he had worked with him and got to experiment with him, it's like they have very similar approaches to fermentation style and just like dialing that in. And he's also super young. That was like the craziest thing to me. I think he's like 27 maybe,
Yeah.
if even that.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy. Like, I'm going to be 36 this Saturday. And I'm always like, whenever I see someone like a whole decade younger than me and they like have a farm and they're producing this crazy coffee, I'm
Yeah.
just like, whoa. And he had that legacy of working with Nestor Lasso. And I'm like, when did you start? Like, well, how does this happen? I'm like, it's so cool to me that he's doing so much at such a young age and like really crushing it. And it's so hopeful too, because like when, a thing in Colombia is that less and less young people are interested in growing coffee because it is, they've seen the generations before of like how much hard work it is and then like how much money you can really make from coffee. It's a struggle for so many producers. And so the fact that now there are more young people wanting to grow coffee, um,
Mhm.
and who have seen like from people like, and there's just been a shift in general of like we know the farmers' names of like who's producing coffees,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
here at Perc, it's something that we really try to emphasize on the bag is like, and like with the chilchile, that's from because Ethiopia's different buying processes. You usually only know like the washing station name because the coffees get multiple farms. They separate it out by grade instead of like by farm, and you don't always know the specific farm that that lot came from. Sometimes you do, but that's just like their buying and selling processes. In Colombia, it's so much more common for farmers to have the access to process their own coffee. So you know that it's from that farm and you know that they processed it. And so it's really cool in Colombia. It's like we can say this person's name, and then seeing all the different kinds of ferment like science and information sharing that happens in Colombia is so cool because it seems like someone starts doing something, but they're not, they're not completely keeping it a secret. They're not like gatekeeping like what they're doing differently.
Yeah.
They're very open about like the science that they're using. And so then it just feels like it is such an investment to do all these different processing styles. I'm not trying to minimize that. It's not like every farmer can go out there and start doing anaerobic fermentations tomorrow because of the tools that you need, and you need the access to the capital to do it. But it is nice that they're not making the knowledge a barrier to it. So, and then it seems like everyone will start processing stuff in a really cool way. And it really seems like there's this like path of mentorship in Colombia that's it's so sweet. I'm always like they're probably just like, hey, that was my boss, and like, but
Yeah.
you can just see that they're they're encouraging other people, younger people, and really helping make it like helping them gain the knowledge to make it happen.
Hmm.
It's just really nice. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm like, it's crazy. He's really young and he's had this background of like working with one of the top producers. So,
But yeah, that's crazy. Let
mhm,
alone we this past Wednesday we cupped some coffees and on there was a Johann Vergara.
mhm.
It was a pink bourbon decaf by him. It was
Oh,
roasted by Luna.
mhm.
Luna's wonderful, love Laura and Nathan. And hands down is the best decaf I think I've ever tasted.
Yeah.
Truly, yeah,
I'm like
it's crazy.
also in
Yeah.
Colombia. The decafs that are happening so delicious.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, as someone who's like, as you get older, you're like, "Oh, thank God, we'll have it figured out so that I can still have like all these crazy delicious coffees, even if I can't have caffeine anymore."
Oh my gosh.
I haven't got to. I'll have to see if we can find that decaf because we like to source fun decaf. So I'm gonna write that down. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's one. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm both
that's
sad
cool.
we didn't get your decaf by Wilton Benitez because that was just that.
Yeah, we had sold out really quickly.
I
Of
think I
it.
told you we've been selling that for the last at least 3 months, if not 4 or 5, from September. We've tasted it also from Moonwake. I truly believe your expression of it is the best.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Oh yeah.
nice.
I think I told it just genuinely like it was very put together. It had a little bit more body than the other two. And the other two, were either like Skittles or Sprite, which are great,
Mm.
but just a little thin. And
Mm.
they felt like stretched. I don't know how you guys did it, but like truly,
Oh,
us as a staff, we're like, we think this is the best. Like me, our social media person, and the other
oh,
GM, Haley, us three agreed.
yeah.
We were just like, this is probably, definitely, the better one. So I'm kind of bummed. But the Los Nogais is insane too. So like,
Yeah, I know. We sold out of that coffee really quickly. So that was last year we got the Los Nogales decaf, and that was the first like nice decaf we got. So it was very much an experiment of like, will people want to buy this from like,
Yeah.
will our people who love Perc want the like fancy decafs too? And so Wilton Bonitas was the second one that we got. And then now the game plan is that we'll always have a fun decaf,
Hmm.
and plan to source enough to like have it around for a little bit longer. But you
Yeah.
know, like the first few times you get it, you're like, okay, let's see if people are interested in this, because you know, like coffee people, we think it's so cool because like we drink coffee all day and want something that's really tasty after we get off work too. Or
Hmm.
um like sometimes I'm just like, I need to go on a little bit of a caffeine detox
Hmm.
because it also starts affecting your palate if you've had too much caffeine and you're
Oh yeah.
more on the addiction side and less on the enjoyment side of it all. So we think it's really cool, but then it's like, do normal people want this thing? Like, are they going to be excited about a fancy decaf? And we got to taste a anaerobic wash decaf from Diego Bermudez the other day that we're going to be sourcing soon. And
Wow.
that one, I was like, it was my favorite coffee on the table. Lately, the decafs have been like some of my favorite
Mm.
coffees on the table. Um, and yeah, that William Benitez one is so good. And I really liked those coffees because they had this like really fun, like they were like a little bit on the herbal side, but in like a lemongrassy kind of like a
Mhm.
floral herbal side.
Yeah.
Which I really like. Like I always say, I just like stuff that brings like a different flavor that I've never had before. And that one had like a ginger flavor too. Like I was just like, that's not something I commonly taste, but
Hmm.
it's really fun. Because I'm more, you know, if people ask like, what's my favorite region or area, and I'm always like, I just like everything for different reasons, and like anything that's bringing a new flavor
Yeah.
to our lineup, I always get really excited about.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, kind of speaking of the decaf, it was amazing. The Los Nogales decaf. Also, this was I believe our second or third time ever trying a decaf from Los
Oh,
Nogales.
mm-hmm.
And to be quite frank, I don't think we've been able to actually serve or even have in the cafe a
Oh,
decaf from the Hernandez family. And so this was just a delight. I don't know why, but like every time like a roaster that like we work with, when they use it, it like goes like too fast. And so this is just too neat, and Los Nogais is becoming one of my more favorite Colombian,
mm,
Oscar and Angie, his brother sister are just amazing. The,
yeah.
the history of the family's crazy. The fact that a lot of coffees have been used to win like the UAE Barista Championship, US Brewers Cup, and Good Spirits
Yeah.
World Championship. Like they're doing a great job, and I mean, obviously, so many others, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, that coffee, I did have it the first time at US Brewers Cup. Uh, Wei from Blending Coffee, that's what he
Yep.
used when he won
Hmm.
last year,
Yeah.
2024 season. And so, like, when you're stage managing, you can't ask to try anyone's coffee. Someone wants to give you coffee, you can definitely, if someone goes like, "Oh, do you want some of my coffee?" You can say, "Okay." But you're not allowed to ask, which makes sense because it's like, yeah, like you're tasting coffee. You need to make sure you have what you need to get stuff done and like you're a volunteer. But if someone offers it to you, you can say yes. But you're not supposed to like make any comment on it because you don't want to like say something and then they're like, Alyssa thought that coffee was great. I'm like, yeah, I think everything, you know, like, and so you usually just like, thank you. And so Weihan, he was practicing for finals that day and he gave me a sip of it. And so I had to use my judge face of like, thank you. And then like after, and we made the announcements that he won, I was like, that's the best coffee I had in so long. And he was like, well, I couldn't tell from your face. And I was like, yeah, that's because I was really trying to like, because we're not supposed, yeah, like you're supposed to like remain neutral the whole time, you know? But that coffee was so good. And then
Hmm.
I bought some off of Blendon's website and brought it to my boss. And my boss was like, whoa, we have to get this coffee too. And I was like, I know, right?
Yeah.
Because we had had some other coffees from Los Nogales. We just hadn't had the decaf yet. So
Yeah.
whenever we bring it in, I'm always like, it's all because of Wei Hong. And like to me, that's like going back to competition stuff. That's like the cool part of competition is like people like me will see someone talking about this really great coffee, get to taste it, and then that's like if I bring it back here and then that's a sale for that farmer. Like I'm like sometimes we don't. A lot of times people don't talk enough about how impactful that can be for a farmer of just like no one like I had never heard anyone talk about that decaf before that, and then all of a sudden everyone has it, and it's so cool seeing that impact. Um, that's like a positive impact for folks, and like knowing that they got a little bit more money that year and selling more of the decaf, and now so many of us have it, and it's all because like Wei Hong was like brought it to stage and like killed it. He's like one of the most like meticulous together competitors I'd ever seen. And now he's judging, so
Yeah.
he gets to bring that to judging too. But
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
that's really cool. Yeah, and
Yeah.
like whoever's like, sometimes when people are like, I get it, it costs a lot of money, and sometimes you're like, why are we doing this? But then it's like moments like that where you're like, oh, I know about this cool process now, or I know about this cool brew method, and like seeing how that can be a positive impact for different businesses along the way is really cool to me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, yeah, some farmers don't always get to like come to the US because like of barriers of like getting the visas or like money, but it's like someone can have a really great cup of coffee, be really excited about it and present it, and then that
Mhm.
we know about it, and they're going to sell more bags because everyone was excited about it too, and that's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It was such a good decaf, and I'm
Mm.
remarkably thankful that we got a hold of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love it too. I
Yeah.
always like whenever we have it, I keep it also surprisingly ages really well because like decaf in general, like, sometimes it falls off, but I'm like, I literally the one that we bought from Blendon, I think we had for like months here because like we'll buy a coffee and then because we're chasing our own coffee too, sometimes they said, but I'm like, that coffee really holds up like months later. I've had our one, I think recently I had the one that we released last year, and it was still tasting like
Yeah.
fruity and herbal. I was like, how does this decaf still taste this good? So, you know,
Yeah.
kudos to Los Nogales and the Hernandez team. Like
Yeah.
that processing really holds up, and like to me that's also just great for consumers. Something that's like still exciting year
Yeah.
off roast, like you're they're doing something really special if that's what happens. So
Yeah. Love to hear it. Well, kind of moving on to the last few coffees. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the Diego Bermudez we got, I think I believe that it is the same coffee that we've had by a couple other roasters. September calls it the buttercream, I think.
mm-hmm.
Yep, and then Dak calls it the milky cake.
Milky cake, yeah.
Yep. And then we did get to sample it from Das Coffee in Dusseldorf as well. Um,
Okay.
and all amazing, genuinely.
Mm.
This this one is close to being my favorite. It's hard. It's
It is really hard. Well, and it's also one of those things where it's like, I mean, we're all doing our own thing with it, but it's really Diego Bermudez that is like shining. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those coffees you can see from like so many roasters, and it's going to be a good coffee because
Oh yeah.
of what he did with it before we even get it. And I always say I can't confirm that it's the same as Milky Cake because they don't have the same amount of information on their website to like.
Yeah.
But I remember when we had it on the cupping table because I had while traveling to North Carolina, Font, which is a really great multi roaster. They had that
Nice.
coffee there, and they
Yeah.
had bought a box there and I knew nothing about that coffee. I just saw thermal shock, and then I saw the tasting notes pistachio and
hmm
and like cream cake or something like
Yeah.
that. And I was like, what is happening here? Why is this thermal shock taste like this? And then I was like, whoa, blown away by it. And then we got samples from Diego Bermudez, and I was like, is this that coffee? And then everyone's like, I don't know. And so we can't, I'm always like, I can't confirm, but I'm like almost 100% positive that it's the same. Um,
Hmm.
it's at least the same processing. I don't know if, I know Castillo is what he has in his lineup right now, but I don't know if he's done like other varieties in the past. I should just ask and be like, are
Yeah.
we all getting the same one? But yeah, it's so good.
This is
It's so good.
amazing. Oh yeah.
And it's something that what I love about it is it's just like, I could give that coffee to like my aunt who like does not like fruity coffee.
Yeah.
She's not, she's a she's a Folgers lady, which is fine,
Hmm.
and she would still love that coffee. I'm like coffee, like people who are drinking the craziest coffee in the world love that coffee, and then the people who are just drinking like commodity coffee also love that coffee. So
Yeah.
I I love coffees like that, and that's like there's something in this for everyone to like because it's
Yeah.
just a nice, pleasant coffee. It reminds me of
Yeah.
when I've always drank coffee. I come from a family who just always has like a pot brewing. But for a little while, I was like really into like putting cinnamon into the grounds, and that's just what it reminds me
Yeah.
of. Just a
Yep.
little sprinkle of cinnamon in the grounds, and it makes it taste like something fancy, even though it's just, you know,
Oh, it's so
was
good.
like, yeah, it's so good. But I can't definitely confirm, but I'm pretty sure based on tasting everyone that it is
Is probably.
very similar.
Yeah, very at least very similar, at least. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
absolutely amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And it's like to me, if you're talking about a coffee for espresso, it's so good on espresso. A cappuccino with that coffee is just so delicious. And yet again, that's something that I think like when you're talking about the differences of the way people dial it in, like when you're talking about uh a style difference between European roasters and US roasters or European roasters do that divide of like this is for filter, this is for espresso.
Mhm.
And at Perc, we're very much into roasting for it to be used a variety of ways. Like I feel like I've brought up a lot of like we want it to taste good because we know that people are going to probably be trying it all the ways. So that's something that I know that's different about us versus like European roasters is that they're dialing it in for what they see. Is it an espresso or a filter? And we are roasting for it to be used a lot of different ways. So
Yeah.
whenever you notice like slight differences between all of ours, I think that's something that like as roasters we do that I know maybe not everyone does of like making sure this roast tastes good all the different ways.
Hmm.
Everyone has a different approach to it. So that's a big important part of the way we approach roasting. So
Yeah.
I think that's why we maybe some when you're lining up and comparing the differences, like when you said that the decaf like had like a better body and stuff. Well, we're also dialing it in for it to be
Mhm.
tasty on espresso. So like body is an important aspect of that. So
Yeah. Yeah, that
mm-hmm.
actually makes sense. And like quite honestly, it's so nice that you roast that way because when we get coffee from roasters that do have kind of a separation, we
Mm-hmm.
still only ever get the filter roast, even for espresso.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, I think we're still happy about it. But yeah, I do think just roasting kind of for both is what we kind of prefer to an extent.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice being able to.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things I'm like, it's just a slight difference in approach that people have. And I know that, like, I always say, we're always like roasting to maximize sweetness. Sometimes people roast to, like, um, maximize just like the terroir of it. And so, like, you get lighter
Mhm.
stuff. And then, so we usually tend to be more in like the light, medium kind of range than like super light. But it's because we want to make sure it's tasting good on an espresso too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, the whoosh whoosh is genuinely the funkiest whoosh whoosh I've ever had.
Yeah, I was just talking about that coffee because it's been really funny seeing. how people like it. Because and it's also to me, have you tried it? How do y'all brew it when y'all brew it? Is it just percolate like V60 origami? What are y'all brewing on?
Yeah. So right now we're brewing on origamis on the Air S, so a little small
Mhm,
guy.
mhm.
We do a 1 to 15 ratio with 4 pulse pours, and
Oh,
yeah, we do a 1 to 3 bloom, and after that, the last 3 pours are divided in between doing like a spiral pour from the outside
mhm,
or from the inside to the outside, and then
mhm.
half of that pour is just doing a center pour. So it's like spiral
Okay,
center, spiral center, spiral
that's
center.
good. Okay.
And yeah, we use it with cone filters currently, but we at least once a month do brewing experiments. So we've
Oh, cool.
uh, our brewing our how we brew has changed in the last 2 years about 5 times, maybe six, five or
Mhm,
6 times, maybe four. I'd have to double check, but at least 4 times. Um, and I personally preferred this coffee on pour over a lot.
mhm.
I really think it sings. I wrote cherry gummies,
Mhm.
sour green apple hard candy, just really fun. Oh,
Yeah. And I don't know if you usually do immersion, but I think AeroPress is my
ooh,
favorite way of drinking this coffee.
okay.
And my theory about it is sometimes with anaerobics, like you might notice this coffee has a little bit has some color variance between the beans because of the anaerobic process. And I feel like whenever we have a coffee like that, if you do it immersion, it's like a little bit more forgiving. And so like you don't have to worry about
Oh,
like picking out as much, like, because like if you see one, but on immersion, this like on an aeropress, this coffee is so good and like really juicy.
yeah.
So if you haven't tried it that way, but I also love it on V60 too. And I this
Yeah.
weekend I was because we use V60, but obviously very similar to an
Oh,
origami if you're
yeah.
using the comb filters.
Hmm.
Um, we this weekend I was just at my family's house and we brewed some my brother-in-law brewed some and just like using Atlanta water and a mocha master and
Yeah.
like a paratha encore and it was delicious and I'm like
Oh, let's go.
um I really like I really like it. But yeah, sometimes the funky aspect of it, like people can be like, like, oh, I don't know. That's why we put the funky word on there to like really like let people know um, like the chalchale is like, it's an anaerobic Ethiopian too, but it's
Yeah.
much, it's clean berry flavors. And then this one, it's like based on how you're brewing it, sometimes you get more of those like winey notes and things like that. So,
Mhm.
we were like trying to emphasize that it's like a little bit and honestly with wash washes in general because we've had a few wash washes I do think that it lends itself to some of those flavors more than other varieties. It usually has like
Yeah.
some boozy, like even on the wash one, something about it's like wine, like white wine,
Hmm.
like so.
Hmm.
I think part of it's the variety of it that lends it to it too.
Oh, yeah. It was absolutely a delicious coffee. Just so intense and fun. I was generally like surprised by it very much. So it was
Yeah.
I was very happy that I think we got to taste it too before.
Mhm.
And so it was nice. It was like still around. So I was like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. That always makes me happy too because sometimes when I send out samples, like it just happens where it's like I'll send something out and then
Yeah.
we'll run out because I don't. It's we try our best to predict how long a coffee will be around, but if people really like it, sometimes it goes a lot faster.
Hmm.
And especially this year, we've been really lucky because like we've been selling more coffee, so we've like adjusted the amounts we're ordering a little bit. So like beginning of this year, we went through everything so quickly because I was like, whoa, how are we going through everything so fast? So
Yeah.
we try our best, but it's like
Yeah.
a good and bad thing. If something's really popular, it's gonna go sooner than we were planning. But
Yeah.
like with
Yeah.
the Wilton Bonitas, we went through all of those very quickly. it
I'm not
just happened.
surprised at all.
Yeah.
I
It was
love
a great. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I actually have to wrap it up. This has been amazing. I feel like we could go longer, but I got things to do. It's crazy.
Yeah, me too. Also, I'm very chatty, so I'm like you. I always am like, okay, I have to stop myself, or else I will chat forever.
No, you are
So
good. But again, thank you so much for everything. For people watching, we are so excited to have Alyssa in St. Louis
yeah,
for a perk takeover, which is gonna be wild.
I'm so excited.
It's gonna be so much fun. I'll talk to you more probably in the next week or two of a couple other like fun things that I don't remember if I've mentioned that you may be able to do or something of the sort. But I'm just really excited. We're couldn't
I
believe you were willing. Honestly.
I've been meaning to come to St. Louis, so I'm like, it's perfect. It's perfect.
Yay! Let's go.
Yeah,
Well, thank you again, Alyssa. This was a delight. Yeah,
thank
enjoy the
you.
rest of your day. All of the
I
above.
had so much fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, have a great
same.
day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.